Welcome to As-Info Podcast, a European format showcasing independent journalistic investigations developed in collaboration with local communities. A project designed to inform, delve deeper, and build new grassroots narratives.
In this episode, we explored the investigation conducted by journalist Mehk Chakraborty, which examines the challenges faced by LGBTIQ migrants through the lens of Malta. The investigation reveals the gap between Malta's progressive reputation and the lived experiences of non-European queer residents who face legal, social, and institutional barriers. The work stems from a collaboration with the Malta Gay Rights Movement. This association actively advocates for equality and dignity for LGBTIQ people, including those at the intersection of migration and marginalization. My first question to you is, tell us about your investigation. What was the subject and why did you choose it?
So the subject of my investigation was LGBTIQ migrants in Malta. By migrants, we also mean general migrants, not only asylum seekers. My idea for this investigation was to look into the different aspects and challenges that LGBTIQ community who are migrants in Malta face. Because while living in Malta as a queer migrant myself, I started hearing stories about people having general issues, accessing healthcare, or not being able to change their gender legally. So this kind of prompted my idea into looking into it from a systematic angle. The way I traced the story and especially the investigation came from this personal element as well, because the methodology was going into interviews as well as testimonies, and then sort of looking at the systematic situation and trying to get some more data and laws concerning the same. The primary output of the investigation has come out in the form of a long-form piece as well as a documentary. So these are the two pieces which also guided the kind of interviewing style that I had. And as one may assume, a lot of the information has had to be put in background because also subjects themselves don't feel comfortable speaking about some of the issues while being named.
So when you were studying the conditions of LGBT migrants in Malta, how do you think the subject affects the territory of Malta, the space of Malta? How does Malta affect the reality of the experience of LGBT migrants?
Regarding that, of course, the larger background of or context of this investigation also matters in this case, because Malta is considered to be the safest and the most progressive in terms of laws within the European Union space. This is how it affects the investigation itself, to kind of look into how the reality turns out for migrants themselves, because considering that legally as well as according to policy, it's supposed to be the most progressive place for LGBTIQ community, which includes, of course, access to healthcare and other kinds of protections. But the reality for migrants is quite different in that sense. Malta being part of the EU and also being signatory to a lot of other international conventions for refugees and for migrants, that also kind of it's important to look at how it lives up to these obligations as well as duties it has as a state within the EU.
And how does it? What did you find?
One of the things which has come into highlight is about the overlapping laws which exist regarding third country nationals or non-EU migrants in general, and how this impacts the LGBT community, for example, is in terms of the legal gender recognition. This is one of the stark examples where this is within the Maltese law itself as well as the EU obligations it has. There's overlaps, and this tends to create a problem for non-EU nationals living in the island in different conditions. From the asylum seeker point of view, there are general conditions which are problematic for asylum seekers because there is no assessment of vulnerability, and there is so-called safe countries which impact LGBTIQ plus refugees specifically, because the idea of a safe country can also contradict the measures that the government considers while assessing LGBTIQ plus refugees. Another issue which also came out, it's a general issue for migrants, but being LGBTIQ plus puts them more vulnerable, is about the workplace conditions. I do believe that there is a lot of movement in terms of labor policy and these things which are being done right now, but we are yet to see what the actual impact is, considering that this exploitation of migrant labor has been a big issue in Malta for the past couple of years anyway. And each time there's a sort of promise or there's some sort of, intention for changing policy, we haven't really seen impact yet. This is what I found in terms of trying to find resolution or trying to find what are the other measures which are available. The government has not directly responded to comments which were posed by me in the research of this documentary. So I want to highlight that as well, like to keep that in mind, that I have tried to reach out and try to see if there are things being done, let's say in the background, or which have not come into public focus, but we don't really have the information about it, so there's not anything I can speak to that.
You worked with the Malta Gay Rights Movement, the MGRM. Tell me about how the organization influenced the process of your investigation, and would you say that process has enriched the work?
So the work that I did with MGRM, I would say it's in two different capacities, because on one hand, they provided a lot of technical support for the documentary part of the investigation in terms of, providing crew members who would be able to shoot, to film for the documentary itself. And the other element was, of course, through the fact-checking process, or to sort of look into some of the, as I mentioned, right, the government themselves were not directly responding to any of the comments or questions. So in that sense, it was good to have the civil society perspective, because there's a lot of negotiations and call for comments, or people reaching out from the civil society themselves directly to government officials, which maybe as journalists or as an activist, or we wouldn't be able to access in that sense. So the help from their element was from both sides. It did impact the investigation quite a bit, because there were some issues or areas which I personally, it would have been difficult to verify if it's a systematic issue, or whether it's just testimonial, because of some of the insights that they have as an organization which works directly with the impacted populations. It was quite helpful in that regard. And yeah, in terms of being able to there's more progress in terms of some of the issues which are lacking from the policy perspective.
This podcast is part of S-Info, a European project funded by the EU, focused on media and driven by the need to strengthen democracy. The views expressed are those of the authors and do not necessarily reflect the position of the European Union. Discover all the investigation on sinfo-project.eu. This podcast was part-funded by the NGO Co-Financing Fund, managed by the Malta Council for the Voluntary Sector, supported by the Ministry for Inclusion and the Voluntary Sector. The content is the sole responsibility of the publisher. The fund and the Council are not liable for any issue arising from it.